All right. Good afternoon, guys. So, didn't do a trade review yesterday, just combining it with today's, and that's kind of where we're picking up. So, this is yesterday's price action. This is what it looked like right before market open. As you can see, there's really no major pivots at all, anywhere near. Uh, just looking at the 1 minute time frame, we have the pre-market high and the basic pre-market low. And that's about it. I mean, we have extremely minor ones here, but not really anything. So as far as my pre-market analysis went, I said I have no pivots near. My only bias this morning is leaning lightly bullish to the Nasdaq supply and then ES supply. Otherwise, I don't really have anything. We'll see how it goes. Pretty much the reason for that is we're just trending up, and the nearest kind of point of liquidity is this pivot here. That's just what we're closest to. If we were to drop down about a lot more, even though it could look like a head and shoulders, then I'd lean a little bit more bearish to this pivot, but we're simply just closer to this pivot and it's in line with the overall trend. Now, one thing I said is before market open, as we started dropping, I sent another message. I said, if we open bearish and invalidate this drop, I will be in calls for the pre-market high. Okay? So not only if we just enter, or not only if we open bearish, but because of this drop that happened, and I sent this a few minutes before where we are right now, because of this drop, this gave us space between here and the nearest pivot. We invalidate a majority of that gap. That'll pretty much complete this bull flag, and I will take QQQ calls, not just to the pivot, but I made the bold assumption that, okay, well, if it gets to this pivot up here, it's probably at least going to get to supply. So that's kind of the trade, the setup that presented itself right before market open. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. Happened within, I feel like most days lately, like more than 50% of the days, at least I feel like 3 days a week, this is happening right at market open, which is also why I tell you guys my plan in advance. A lot of these trades you're not going to catch if you're just sucking your thumb waiting for me to send out a full buy alert. Otherwise, you won't make any. Uh, you're not independent enough to place a trade yourself, right? I send my plan in advance, and if you look at my plan, you already know what I'm gonna do before I do it, right? So you don't really need to buy. You don't really need an alert. If you follow the alert, you're buying all the way at the high. This candle shot up. It didn't shoot up right in the right at the beginning. I filled somewhere right here on the candle, about halfway up. So there was a decent window to enter, and yeah, it was a fantastic trade to start the day off. I filled at 65 cents and got right to where I wanted it to go. Ended up getting all the way to 65% gains. I was going for the next supply. Sold pretty much the rest here, except a single runner contract, which I dumped once it rejected supply, which was on this candle. And that wrapped up the first trade. So we're starting off the day pretty strong. 65% gains on the first trade. Beautiful. And now this is interesting. ES is a lot weaker than NQ, and it did get a bearish liquidity sweep, and it's invalidating a majority of the move. But lately, my zones indicator, the supply and demand you see on the chart, has been fantastic lately, and I'm not as confident betting against supply or demand as I usually am. But this looks pretty good. ES is weaker than NQ. I'm just not 100% sure if NQ wants to make new low of day. But once I'm confident that NQ wants to make new low of day and then perhaps demand as well, then I'll be willing to take a trade. But like I said, I've been fairly skittish with betting against supply and demand. This is another nice candle on ES. I'm starting to lean towards SPX puts, but you know, NQ's putting in these buying wicks here. I'm not 100% sure or confident in what direction I'd like to pick. As you can see, ES is trying to bounce out of demand. That does not help my bearish bias at all. That was a fairly bearish candle. This is a fairly bearish candle here. This looks like baby bearish consolidation. I still didn't pull the trigger though. I didn't really pull the trigger until this broke to the downside. Now that it broke to the downside, now I'm starting to be more confident because it's pretty obvious that NQ is going to get new low of day here. And not only that, if it does bounce right before getting new low of day, that'd be a good place to average down. So I did end up taking my first trade. Not this candle, though. I believe it was on this candle. I can't remember exactly. Let me see. Oh, nope. Not on this candle. ES was a little bit too oversold. NQ getting really close. I'm thinking I'm going to miss it. And then it bounces. This bounce is where I enter my SPX puts. Now, ES is still weaker than NQ, but I only entered half size because the risk to reward isn't fantastic. But I did feel kind of at the top of this green candle because I know it's extremely likely if NQ's bouncing right before this pivot, it's probably going to end up getting it now that it's come this close. My big PT is all the way down here, but realistically, I'm kind of just looking for NQ to get new low of day. And once that happens, it depends how it breaks, right? If it starts kind of sweeping it, I'll probably just take a really small win. Otherwise, I'd like to make a bet that it ends up heading down to demand. Well, it did end up getting there. And I sold everything here except for one single runner position. That was pretty much it. And I sold that runner position halfway up this candle. That was a small win. The contracts also chopped a ton. We had PMI coming up, so they were chopping a bunch. I got a whopping 10% gains on that trade. But was this the PMI candle? Yeah, this was the PMI candle here. And the contracts just got freaking obliterated. Really should have been 20%, but whatever. Anyways, that's a really bullish liquidity sweep on NQ, and I'm thankful that I put in this buying wick because a buying wick, it didn't really get that big of a volume spike, but a buying wick in this heavy demand plus NQ's on a pivot, it's a pretty good sign to get out. Now, this is a really bullish liquidity sweep on NQ. Looks pretty good for a bounce, and this candle hornswoggled me in. I filled on QQQ calls pretty much all the way up here. And right after I filled, and I didn't fill early into the candle at all. I filled when the candle had like 10 seconds left. And then magically, right after I filled, it turned all the way around. So I'm thinking I'm going to stop out. I did enter half size again because I wasn't so sure that ES wants to go all the way back up because ES did not sweep that pivot. But NQ stronger than ES. It swept buy side liquidity. And then ES also being in demand, I really liked it, especially with NQ invalidating the majority of this move. But I did say, if this wick fully invalidates, then I'll average up or average down, whatever it ends up being. Now, it almost fully invalidated there, and it did on this candle, but it immediately put in a selling wick I didn't add. I ended up adding when this wick invalidated. And one thing I said is that's super bearish, right? These two massive selling wicks. But if you look at these selling wicks, conventionally these candles are shooting stars. They're pretty bearish candles. But look in the context of when they happened. They happened after a bullish liquidity sweep following this extremely bullish candle. The sweep itself was bullish, nice volume spike, nice pivot, ES is in demand. Super bullish green candle, and then immediate massive shooting star. Well, how the market react to that shooting star? We put in another massive green candle. What's that mean? Well, shorts are getting in here for whatever reason. Their hypothesis is that it's going to go down. This green candle invalidates their hypothesis. And when traders' hypotheses get invalidated, they stop out of their positions. And if you're short, you stop out by buying them back, right? Which can cause a short squeeze if it's big enough. So I watch a very bold entrance by bears, very bold hypothesis declaration. We want to send this thing back down. And then the bulls respond by invalidating that candle. Now, this candle comes along right after and doubles down on the bearish hypothesis. super bearish shooting star, completely invalidated another huge green candle. And now it's looking like the bears are actually going to win. Okay, I guess I don't get my long tool drawing back. So now it's looking like the bears are going to win. I'm expecting to stop out of this trade. But one thing I do say is, for sure, if this drop invalidates, I'm adding my second half to this trade. Not thinking it's going to invalidate at all, but if it does, it should short squeeze because the bears have doubled down on their hypothesis, and you're only going to allow so many invalidations of your directional leg before a stop loss rate or short squeeze happens, right? So that's why rising wedges are bearish and falling wedges are bullish, right? Every up move is a bullish leg, and if the up moves keep invalidating and we keep sweeping higher highs, it's going to be bearish, right? Eventually, there's going to be a time when there's not enough bulls to save it and step in front of the shorts to make it bounce back up, and it's going to go down just enough to start triggering all of the bull stop losses. Hence, you get a stop loss rate. So if this goes back up, shorts have now boldly stepped in twice. That's a lot of shorts exposed, and if the bulls can somehow overpower this strong hypothesis, all of these shorts here, all of them that entered in this box are going to start stopping out, which would look fantastic for a short squeeze. Unfortunately, this red candle didn't look like it was going to happen. So, but then we got this candle. There's a lot of hope. Next candle opens bullish. I'm doing it. And I did. I added to this trade, ended up being an average down. I was in initially at 73 cents. Even though I entered above my initial entry, it did end up being an average down. I think it was 66 cents or something like that. I don't remember. It was yesterday. Bears trying to step in again. Look how it keeps making higher highs and bears keep stepping in. And there's a short squeeze. Typically, for a short squeeze to happen, it shouldn't take more than 3 leg invalidations to happen, and vice versa for stop loss rates. And this was exactly 3, right? Leg here, short leg here, short leg here. 3 invalidations produce a short squeeze. That was beautiful. Unfortunately, the calls did chop, but that was 41% gains there, and that was it. So I really only had 2 trades yesterday. This one, which was super sketchy, but we did end up getting the short squeeze that I wanted. And then right at open, we had the scalp to this high, which was beautiful. But with that being said, does anyone have any questions whatsoever? No? All right. Let me type in chat because you guys actually no, you guys can just watch the YouTube. All right, let's go to the next day. Why am I blanking right now? So this is today, and I ended up dumping way later in the day. I didn't trade futures today because I'm working so much on Trade Arena, but why is this so bright? Do I have 2 of them? I do have 2 of them. Okay, so this is what the market looked like before today's open. It may look like there's a lot of context. There really isn't. Let's just mark out our nearest pivots. We have this one here, which is sweeping currently. We have this one, this one, this one. All these are pretty far away, especially because I'm on the 15-minute. But this is what we have. All right, so where is our nearest point of liquidity? Well, we are already sweeping it, so that doesn't help. And then the closest one is still, technically the closest one is actually all the way down here, but what do we have? We have a lot of demand zones. We have a 1 month demand zone here. We have a 1 day demand zone on NQ, and then we have we have 2 daily demand zones on NQ here, and then we have a monthly, an hourly, a 4 hour, and then 30 minutes. So we have really, really, really heavy demand today. Very heavy demand, no pivots. So, given the context of how heavy demand is, and the fact that we're trying to bullishly sweep a pivot right now, I was leaning bullish today. Not really to any pivots though. Not really to any pivots at all. Nothing, nothing crazy. So that was my bias. Still fairly mild, mostly just a supply and demand bias. And yeah, we're just in heavy demand. Really, the only trade that I can fathom is if we start coming up, I can take a continuation, a momentum trade from demand to supply. Pretty basic use of my indicator. And yeah, here it is. So I took it. Took the QQQ calls from here, PT supply, so not very far away at all. And it did get there. However, ES was also extremely strong. Actually, ES flipped stronger than NQ. You see how small this green candle here on NQ is? Look how big this one is on ES. So I kept a QQQ runner position, but I also added SPX calls here. A bit lighter size because I was already in Q calls. But this is the exact same trade I just took, except ES is now stronger. So the odds aren't bad at all. And it got right there. So that was pretty cool. I was out by this time. NQ got to the next supply. ES got to this supply. I was out. Super easy market open. Didn't have to rush into the trade like I did for the last couple days. You know, entering in the first 10 seconds. I don't really like doing that. So I got 53% gains on the QQQ calls and 44% on the SPX calls. And the SPX calls, 44% on the entire position. I didn't hold any runners, all in, all out, right when it got to supply. And that did end up being the top. So I was thinking I'm going to be done because ES ended up flipping back to being weak. And we beautifully rejected supply. Now, I could take a put trade from ES to where it is now to demand, but honestly, the PT is way too close. Bad risk to award. So on and so forth. Can't really do it. But then notice NQ comes all the way back up. NQ ends up being very, very, very strong. Invalidated nearly this entire drop. Now, it did put in a selling wick, but what I did say in my channel is if NQ completes 2 oscillations and it turns into a bull flag, that's bullish consolidation. I'm okay entering one more trade to the nearest pivot. But ideally, ES gets demand first, and ES did. So if NQ comes up right now, it would be beautiful. Unfortunately, got one more red candle, and I really didn't like this red candle because now it's not a bull flag anymore. You know, it can still come up, but it's not a bull flag anymore. Bullish consolidation can never invalidate 50% of the first leg. And this one validated 50%. So that doesn't mean it's not going to go up, but it's not going to go up because it's a bull flag, because it's not. And that gave me a lot of doubt. But I did like ES and NQ's volume spike here. And we still did shoot up. So I did end up entering QQQ calls. Wasn't crazy. Wasn't a very heavy trade either because that extra little drop made me pretty skittish. But it's a really nice bounce for me as demand. I think it's got a shot for supply. Also, this isn't really a valid high of day for me. Whenever you see a perfect double top like this, it's not a perfect double top in the sense where it needs to break. The candles are 2 candles apart, so it doesn't matter. But if you go back through the last, I don't know, if you just go back historically and look at where the tops and bottoms of the day are, you're not really going to see any tops that look like this, where there's 2 or more candles that top out at the exact same tick. Typically not going to happen. Typically your highs and lows are going to be pretty pointy, as you can see here, right? They're all pointy. That's just a fact, right? They're all pretty much pointy. This isn't very pointy. Doesn't mean I'm taking a trade for it or anything like that, but it is something good to know that statistically this probably isn't going to hold. And it was sketchy at first, but did end up working out. We did blow right through PT, which was beautiful. And 66% gains is what they got, or it's what I got. They did end up going further. I sold early. I sold right here, and I kind of scaled out on the way up because, again, it kept rejecting and the contract started chopping and whatnot. But I did give you guys this price target, my next pivot. And we just so happened to top out there. So would have been a nice reversal trade if you ended up taking it. If I were trading futures, which I can't do until 8:30, I would have been triggered into a reversal trade there, right? You had a liquidity sweep, you had a volume spike, and you were in supply. With the only thing you're going against is the trend. That's 3-1. Statistically, that's a good trade, and it did end up working. But yeah, that was my day. So 3 trades, really only 2 different hypotheses. Right, because it initially just started out demand as supply. A super easy morning. And pretty much every single morning lately has been pretty easy. I've still had a decent amount of losses, but overall, like, I don't even know. I have to think really hard. Or I honestly have to check my Schwab summary. I remember the last red day we had. It's been green for like every day. And I keep telling my people in my Discord that we are definitely due for a red day. So don't start betting the farm because definitely do. So, but I'll keep doing what I'm doing. You know, the momentum trading in the first hour, it's going freaking fantastic. There's been so much momentum and trend during the first hour lately that you can't really go wrong taking momentum and liquidity based trades. And I don't really see this, especially with all the Iran stuff happening right now in the fundamentals behind price action. I don't really see that ending anytime soon. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully I keep getting the same results. But all right, I'll let you guys know when this is posted, and we will do a masterclass sometime this month. I haven't done one since December, but I definitely need to do one sometime soon. So stay tuned for that announcement, and maybe next weekend. Maybe next week we'll do it. But stay tuned for that announcement. I'll also let you guys know in these trade reviews. And if you guys have any questions, preferably DM me on Discord. I'm a little bit behind on my DMs. Or if you comment on my YouTube videos, I'll reply to those sometime whenever I see them. And we can go from there. But all right. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later.